Good evening and welcome to the January 13th Board of Select meeting. And keeping with the agenda, Mrs. Hine, do we have a warrant?
Yep, tonight's warrant is for $2,088,835.47, of which the school payroll is $1,285,459.75, and the town payroll is $156,791.83.
Very good, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Go right ahead, you sign first. Public comment. Tina?
Yeah, so first I'd just like to congratulate Dr. Brad Jackson for winning, being awarded rather, the Superintendent of the Year for 2020 for the state of Massachusetts. I think it's a tremendous honor for Dr. Jackson, not the first, I'm sure, in his lengthy career, but certainly a notable award, and I think it speaks very highly of the quality of educators and leadership that we have here in Holliston. So again, congratulations, Dr. Jackson.
Absolutely, it's really remarkable. And Mr. Cronin?
No remarks at this time.
Okay.
Actually,
What's that?
I have a few other
Go right
public
ahead.
comments. I just wanted to say that I met this week with the Vice Chair of the Ashland Select Board, just to keep folks up to date, you know, in terms of who I'm talking to and what we're talking about. And we talked about, you know, sort of best practices for executive boards in terms of budget process, good collaboration among other boards and committees, and shared interests. And she updated me on the Route 126 improvements that are coming. I believe she had said sort of April timeframe of 2021, and specifically the improvements that will bring to the rail trail access in that section of 126 in Ashland, giving people access to the MBTA in Framingham. I wanted to let people know that I'll be attending the Massachusetts Municipal Association seminar or conference, which is not this weekend, but the next. And I'll be attending workshops on the use of marijuana in Massachusetts, on transportation, affordable housing, budgeting, and finance. And I will be networking there with representatives from our region, including Ashland, who I think is sending 3 or 4 of their municipal employees and elected and appointed officials. And then finally, I attended a day-long Complete Streets workshop last week at Mass DOT, and there were representatives from Mass DOT there to talk about the state's commitment to improved equity among all modes of transportation, from the State Secretary of Transportation, Stephanie Pollock, all the way down to the municipal level. There was discussion about the funding that's available for projects in the future to address all modes of transportation, including safe routes to school. And the message was strong from those presenting at the workshop that the state of Massachusetts sees the future of addressing congestion in the state as encouraging all modes of transportation, and that there needs to be a decreased reliance on passenger vehicle transportation, and that in their funding of projects, they are looking for those that address all modes of transportation. And finally, Holliston's ready to submit our policy, our Complete Streets policy, which will put us in line for $38,000 of technical assistance. And once we have our list of priority projects, we can apply for up to $400,000 in funding. And I spoke at length with Mass DOT on how to position Holliston in the strongest position possible for when we do go forward to apply for that $400,000 worth of funding. So that's just my update for the week.
Wonderful. You've been busy.
It was a busy week.
I would just like to bring you some sad news. A longtime resident and has passed away, and her name is Pat Duffy. And a lot of you, I'm sure, know Pat. She was a former board director for our health department, and where she did a lot of work, and she was a registered nurse and helped out immensely with the flu clinic that we did every year, amongst other things. But she's also been extremely active in a number of other areas of our town, usually playing a big role in organizational skills, working with Holliston and Bloom as one of the founding members. It was Pat that always organized the judges' reception, for instance, and it was a lot of work to do something like that for a whole town. And Pat wasn't afraid to ask people to do things, and she was good at it. She's also very helpful with the Holliston Lions Club, organizing a lot of events for the Lions, and again, usually organizing food, and you know, just helping the event to be a more thought out, planned event with all of her organizational school skills and contacts that she had throughout the town and beyond. And she helped out enormously with her church, and also would often connect with the youth to get them involved with things in our town. So we can't say enough about her, and we give her our condolences to her family, and so we were very sad to hear that she has passed. And that's all I have. Mr. Ritter, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Anyone from the audience like to say anything? Okay. We'll move on to the report of our town administrator.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've got probably the shortest report I've ever provided to the board.
Okay.
Primarily because I'm just so consumed with budgets and all that stuff.
Right.
The Finance Committee was scheduled to meet tomorrow evening, but they are postponing that until Thursday evening instead. So they'll be meeting here at Thursday instead of tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And finally, just as a reminder, on January 24th at 4 p.m., the school committee will be hosting a school strategic improvements initiative meeting. Okay, so this is an annual event where the finance committee, the selectmen, and the select board and the public have an opportunity and the benefit of hearing input as to the new initiatives that are coming forward from the various departments within the schools in the context of the FY21 budget. So I plan to be there to listen to that, and hopefully you will be also. That's all I have.
To that end, if you're the liaison, right? I would recommend if we've got more than one attending, we post. Do you have
Yeah,
any?
why don't you post just in case?
Yeah, I plan to, I'll be late because I'll be coming from the MMA conference in Boston. It's the 24th, Jeff?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay.
Friday.
Yeah, okay. I just have a quick question, Jeff. I had someone come to my office hours today, and they had a question on the update, if there were going to be any updates in the near future on the design plans for the water treatment plan.
Well, we have a water hearing coming up, I think it's on the 24th of February.
Okay.
So Sean will be here for that. He'll also be here in the context of his budget.
Okay.
So those are two opportunities to get an update on that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Next, we have the distinguished Rail Trail Committee Chairman here, Robert Wideneck. Would you come up and
Thank you.
talk to us about the grant and so forth?
Yes,
Drainage issues.
Yeah, the reason I'm here is obviously to talk about the going after a grant. What used to be under the Recreational Trails Program is the grant program that we use to construct most of the improvements along the trail itself. And now that the trail's complete, we're trying to tweak various things along the way. And so what I'll be looking for tonight is your approval to go forward with the grant application and submit it, and then also to get your approval as the landowner to construct the improvements when we do, and if we do get the grant itself. But the purpose of the grant is a Mass Trails program, is that if you're familiar with the Phipps Tunnel and the Phipps Hill, the right-of-way it's almost 200 feet wide at that point, and there are all these tall trees on either side. One-to-one slope leads down right to the trail, and we have two ditches on either side of the trail. Well, all those leaves all come down at that one location, and it's been an ongoing maintenance nightmare. We usually get a bunch of volunteers out there with rakes and shovels and scoop it all out. And then-
MathWorks, they usually come.
MathWorks has done it a number of times.
I hope
and-
you feed them all lunch when they come. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and it's a messy work because it's
Yeah.
all muddy and mucky and smelly and all
Yeah.
that, after the leaves have accumulated there. And so what the intent is, and in the package of information that I did provide to you, we have what we're planning to do is on the easterly side, in other words, as you're heading from Phipps Tunnel towards town, on the right-hand side, what we intend to do is to take the existing ditch and actually install a perforated 12-inch diameter pipe that will not only allow groundwater to come up and rise up through and flow out, but also surface water that comes off that hill to go
Yeah.
into it and have a drainage filter fabric and all that to convey that water to get it there. And that will enable us to actually widen the trail on the one side at least. And so, first night activities, how
Yeah.
at night,
Yeah.
people are walking along the trail and it's narrow and people could fall in. So one, it'll make it a little bit wider. It'll allow us to keep, so now we'll be able to blow the leaves interim in the process and just push them all to one side so that if we can get the highway department out there with a vacuum truck or even landscapers, hire them to come along and vacuum those
Get rid of
leaves out. Because now, once they get wet and heavy and mucky and they're mixed in with gravel, and it's a nightmare to try to get those out. And each year we have to do it, because what has happened in the past is that they accumulate, and all it takes is one stick or branch or something to get in there, and it dams it up, and then the water has to bypass around it, and it washes away the stone dust. And so we've had some washouts from time to time.
Where
in
does
that
the
area.
water want to go?
It's actually from the other side of the tunnel, in other words, towards Cross Street. There's a side, or it used to be a siding that went off over to
Chicken Brook?
towards Chicken Brook. Yeah, it's actually before Chicken Brook. Went off to one of the buildings. They made labels.
Access
Oh,
across?
Dennison's?
Avery Dennison.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to have a building over there. It's now occupied by a few other hockey place and some other. But from that point, in other words, south and west of Phipps Hill, all the drainage goes down those two ditches, through the tunnel, through two different pipes. They have two cast iron pipes that run through the tunnel, and then through the ditches down to Little Folk Farm. One goes in front of Little Folk Farm, the other goes the other way towards Lake Winthrop, I guess.
Down-
They eventually connects, it all goes, I think, over to Lake Winthrop, but,
So this grant, I don't want to jump where you're going with this, but is it seeking to redesign that drainage or just simply improve the way we collect the water?
it's neither of that. It's you have two ditches on either side, so it's about 900 feet of ditch that we're actually going to clean it out, put in a pipe, and then cover the surface with stone dust. And so, except leaving right at the wall for water to weep down into the perforated pipe. And so it's still going that same direction from the tunnel towards the center of town, call it. So it's still flowing in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll maintain that same flow.
It just
all
won't
that.
sit there.
It just, or have all those leaves plugged into that ditch
Right.
that then gets wet and heavy and hard to remove. That's,
So you don't really need a catch basin, you think the pipe will do it itself?
yeah, because we have both groundwater issue. If you notice when you walk through the tunnel, on both sides of the tunnel, on the approaches, the stone dust is a lot firmer, and that's from groundwater actually rising up
Right.
through that. And
High
so,
water table.
yeah, and so this will, allow that to dry out a little better by, taking the groundwater that's rising up to take that through and out, and so that'll hopefully dry things out a little better too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have quite a non sequitur question. I apologize, but
Okay.
standing water is nobody's friend, right? We had a bad season with Triple E this year, as you
Right.
probably know.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd ask at this point, was the trail treated for Triple E this year?
I don't know that in the past, mosquito control has gone down the trail and
They
done
have,
some
okay.
things, but I don't do any of that coordination
Okay.
with them. And we've also had them excavate those ditches through the tunnel.
For that reason?
At one
yeah.
time.
You don't want the standing water,
No,
get it out.
no.
yeah. Okay, sorry, Bob.
That's okay. Actually, the history of the railroad is such that those ditches were intended to hold water in order, when the coal ash from the train, as they went through, when they opened the hopper, the coal went shooting. This was designed for 40 miles an hour. And so when they're flying down there 40 miles an hour, it doesn't burn the fields on either side of the trail. And so a lot of these ditches were actually called spark arresters.
Wow.
And so unfortunately, they're now a nightmare in terms of providing habitat for mosquitoes.
Right, yeah. Interesting.
So I said, so the construction costs are basically involved in perforated pipe, cross drains, perforated, some gravel, some under drains, and then some of the costs of bringing in stone dust. We'll probably spread it by hand and compact it by hand rather than getting a paving machine in through there. But we'll try to do it cheaper than other times that we've done that.
So you don't want to use crushed stone? Or
We'll use wash crushed stone around the pipe and up to the wall.
Okay.
And then from that point, say you're 6 inches out from the wall, it'll be stone dust all the way across. So the stone dust will be, complete across that
I see.
trail.
Yeah, I see.
And so that, under this program, it's 80% funded by it's actually a federal program. And so 80%, and of that, we have to come up with obviously the 20%.
Right.
And that can be volunteer, and in the past, that's the way we've done most of it,
Yeah,
is
in
all the
kind.
volunteer help and
donation,
equipment, and like with Herb Brockert has
Right.
donated equipment, materials, that sort of thing. So we don't seek any funding from the town for this, and so it would just be, going forward with what is about, if you saw the application, it's a little over 20,000 that we're seeking from the federal. We'll match it with another 10. And so it'll be about 30,000.
Great.
So the 10 is a complete soft match, you don't need any, okay.
It depends upon how things go. It depends upon whether we have to hire, trucks for bringing the gravel and that sort of thing. But we'll try to keep it to that 80-20 thing. But we think we've done it almost entirely in the past with volunteer help. But if not, we'll use either the Friends of money or we have a
Just gonna
gift
ask you
account.
that,
Yeah, so we don't intend to come before the town at all for any of that funding.
And are you optimistic that, so you've got grant money through the same type of program in 11, 14, 19, and 12, 11, 12, 14, and 19? Did you get the full amount you requested? Or you anticipate you'll get the full 20,000?
They either grant it to you entirely or not.
Okay.
And there's a lot of competition for this funding, and so they put a high priority in regional trails. We've already built our regional trail to some degree, so I don't know how they're going to feel about this. Is more of a maintenance issue.
Okay.
So I don't know the likelihood of us getting this, but yet in the past, we've actually gotten more than we've asked for.
Oh, okay.
There was a situation where we were partway through a grant and of $50,000, and then the DCR called us and says, "Hey, we've got X number of dollars. Would you want more?" And we said, "Yeah, we could finish the trail basically with extra money. Can we get another 90?" And they said, "Sure." So we didn't even have to apply for it. We just added to the
Okay.
pot. So yeah, they're very good in terms of that.
Okay.
Well, once they see your project and realize that it's a good project, they want to support it.
Yeah, especially, like I say, they prioritize regional projects where we're connected to Sherburne and Milford and hopefully Ashland and Hopkinton and Framingham as well.
So, great.
Oh,
And
what's
no,
I'm sorry, good.
no equipment's being purchased with this?
No.
Right, okay.
What's the timeline for the project and the grant?
We have to submit it by February 1st. I think you hear about it not until like September. I don't know if they've changed it. They used to be, they'd award it like in September, and then you'd be able to start it soon thereafter. So if it's the same timeline, I would say probably,
project.
fall of
Fall
this
project.
year project. So
Just in time for
unfortunately,
the
we'll-
leaves.
we'll have to remove the leaves by hand this year, which is not fun.
Oh. Any other questions?
Not about the grant, but about the trail, so
Go
we
right
want to
ahead,
move on.
sir.
So, like I say, what I'm seeking from you is one, I don't know if you had a
You
chance
need
to go
two
through.
motions?
Two motions, one, and maybe one is a letter, and I gave you a draft letter. You can tweak it as well as you want. But basically, what we're looking to do is to have you authorize me to file, it's an online form, and that's why it unfortunately doesn't come out that well with 18 pages or whatever it was. So it's an online form. If you have any changes, comments, whatever on that, and then I can submit it before February 1st. So let me know if you have comments or questions before that. And then I'll need authorization as landowner to be able to say that, we grant the authority for the Holliston Trails Committee to coordinate the construction of the improvements as
Okay.
stated in the grant application.
You have more questions, or are you ready for,
Why don't we clean this up, and I just got a couple of trail questions for after this.
okay, 2 motions we need.
Tonight, you need both of them?
I don't need it tonight, sometime before February 1st.
It's easier to do it tonight,
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
kinda needs a little.
So I'll make a motion to enable Mr. Wynick to file on behalf of the town. Is it a what's the name of the grant program?
Mass Trails
Mass
program?
Trails Program Grant, could you announce the amounts again, please? 20,000, total of $30,000 grant, of which 30% is matched.
Or
by the
20%.
town. 20%.
I pulled off the tag, unfortunately, and now I don't know where it is.
$30,849 is the grant request.
Total grant.
Total grant request.
Of which there's a 20% match. So that is my motion.
Do I have a
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the second motion?
So Robert, you were saying you needed permission to, what was the second one?
To
File.
allow the Trails Committee to coordinate the construction of the improvements as stated in the grant.
Would that be something we would hold, though, until it was awarded?
The grant application
Oh,
asks
okay.
for authority, because in the past, what they've had is situations
You wanna
where
make sure you're serious.
the owner or whoever is doing the trail may not own the land, and so
Right.
they need owner authorization, so as owner
Okay, so I'll
authorization.
make a motion to, contingent upon a successful award,
Yep.
enable the Rails Trail team to initiate the work associated with this grant award.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now you have
Your
another
questions?
question.
Just 2 questions while I have you, Bob. If you could give us an idea of any progress or timelines associated with the work behind Casey's Crossing and the work that they're planning to do there.
I actually don't know that. That's
I know it's a
actually-
separate committee.
Yeah,
I
it's a
thought you
separate
might know.
committee, and so I haven't heard, I think what they're waiting for is, Joyce Hastings from GLM is donating the services to prepare the plan for that particular section of the trail.
Okay.
And I think it involves dealing with some drainage issues, because right now the drainage comes off the Casey's building itself and sort of ponds up right behind the building. And so they'll want to see if there's a way to get from that over to Railroad Street to get some of the drainage. And then, they have the funding
They
under
do,
the
yeah.
same program. So it's just a function of getting the plan. I don't know what approvals, I don't think there's any Conservation Commission approvals in that case. So I believe it would just be, and I think the Highway Department has offered to do some of the construction of the section of it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they're gonna pave it too,
Yep.
so, very helpful.
My next question is on the same topic of trail projects. It's the Blair Square project. You're not associated with that either.
Right, both
So-
of those pieces are part of the Blair Square
So-
Trail Committee.
That's fine, and I understand that. Maybe Mr. Ritter if I could ask you to maybe reach out to that group as we prepare for spring work and see if that's something they're envisioning doing with the grant.
The Blair Square Committee that I'm liaison with has come up with a new plan, and they'll be bringing us an update. They wanted to move the rail trail to one side so that you can have a wider area for the Blair Park or Blair Square, because right now the trail cuts it in half,
Right,
and it makes it very, very inconvenient
and small.
and kind of narrow and thin, and there's concern about, children being at an event and backing up into where a bicyclist is coming. So the thought was to move the trail up closer to CVS and then loop it back, and then that gives you a nice area for people to congregate and so forth. So we'll be getting updates on that, so.
Should we ask Mr. Ritter to reach out to the team to come in?
Yeah,
Schedule a
we-
date in February?
Yeah,
or-
sometime in February, if we could get on the agenda.
Thanks, Bob.
Anything else? Are we all set?
That's it.
Thank you
sir.
very much for your time.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care.
And make sure you thank everybody else on the committee.
All right.
Are you guys meeting this Wednesday?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you meeting Wednesday?
Not this Wednesday, the 22nd, I believe it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Donna Walsh to talk to us about the animal control budget. And if you want to bring the Ashland Chief of Police up with you and share a mic here.
Thank you.
And for those of you who don't know, we share an animal control officer with the town of Ashland. It's worked out well for us over the years. And so I'm going to present your budget and go over a master plan, so to speak, for animal control and anything else you want to tell us.
Great. I guess I'll start out because
Sure.
we've done a detailed analysis of the intermunicipal agreement. The agreement is old. It's over 10 years old. 2009, June of 2009, it was actually signed. And there's been a lot of things in 10 years that have changed.
Yeah.
The agreement has not changed, nor has the fee structure. Departmental structures have changed, both within Ashland and within Holliston. What we'd like to do is we're doing a detailed study of the agreement, and we're looking to update it
Sure.
and bring it more into the present. There's a lot of aspects of the agreement that might have worked 10 years ago, and now they're just, they need to be refreshed
Yeah.
and updated. There's been significant cost increases. We have had staffing increases. So we do have some concerns. We're going to detail everything for you
Sure.
and sit down, and then the two town managers can hash it out. That's the beauty of being town managers.
Yeah.
Is they can hash that out. But for now, I know that there's a payment that's being made to the town of Ashland. That's fine as far as that goes. But we have several months before action would need to be taken one way or another on the agreement.
Okay.
We would certainly like to continue with it,
Yeah.
but it really needs to be updated in many areas. Call volume has increased in both communities,
Yeah.
needless to say, in 10 years.
With the increase in population comes.
Yeah, increase in population. Holliston is a vibrant town, as in Ashland. They're
Yeah.
both very
What's the population in Ashland now?
I think we're up to about 19,000 now.
Oh,
And
a little
climbing.
more than us.
Yeah, and climbing.
Yeah.
They keep putting up new buildings, and real estate is,
Yeah.
houses don't stay on the market long at all, as
No.
in Holliston. I mean, it's a
No.
great community to live in.
Right.
So we will be conducting that detailed study of the agreement. We'll provide you with all the actual figures. I just brought some things just to give you an idea.
Sure.
Last year, we did a study, 2019. Ashland had 338 calls for service for animal control, and Holliston had 127. And those
300 and what?
127,
And how many in Ashland?
338.
Okay.
So it's a difference of about 211 calls that Ashland is ahead there.
Right.
And when I say calls for service, these are actual calls driven by either the police, the fire department, or a person. They don't count inspections. They don't count administrative meetings. So needless to say, Dawn is keeping very, very busy.
Yeah.
Um,
And you have an assistant part-time?
I do.
Yes.
How many hours a week is that?
About 20, give or
It can be,
take.
yeah, it's up to 20, depending on
Up
what
to
we
20?
need.
Right, and she would,
Usually weekends and holidays is her normal.
and she would cover for Donna for vacation, so we don't have a lapse in
Yeah.
coverage. And she is paid, I'll just give you an example, salary and benefits for both Donna and the part-time officer are about $67,000. That's just salary for those two. We submitted in our budget this year, FY '21, $14,650 for operational costs for the kennel. And those operational costs primarily include food and veterinary bills. The kennel itself, which is a town-owned building, that does not fortunately come out of my budget, but that does come out of the town building budget, so.
Yeah.
All utilities, fuel, insurance, IT costs.
Sure.
Monitored alarm system, all those costs come out of the town-owned buildings costs. So those would be above and beyond that 14.
67.
Yeah, so that would be above and beyond that. There is a concern too, we provide 2 vehicles. One of them is a Ford F-150 pickup, that was about a $40,000 vehicle. Actually more when it was new to equip it. And we've also added a second vehicle because of the large dogs. It's very difficult to get them into the small kennel in the pickup truck. That's about it. We retrofitted one of our police cruisers, so we put about $20,000 into that.
Yeah.
In the agreement, it calls for Holliston to provide a vehicle, and Holliston hasn't provided a vehicle in years.
Okay.
So that's something obviously we wanna talk to you about.
Sure.
And again, we've been responsible for all the fuel maintenance costs for all the vehicles. So state training has increased, the state mandated training since the inception of the agreement. So we've been responsible for that. So there's a lot of areas that we really need to look at the agreement to catch up on things that have occurred.
That's what it sounds like.
And as far as time, Dawn is finding herself spending more and more time here as the call volume rises.
Right.
And it's risen nationally too. It's certainly nothing that's
Right.
unique to you.
Do you think having the full-time and assistant model is going to be sustainable?
If we have a situation where we need her on staff at the same time, like because it's a multi-person call, or, we're expecting something busy, a busy situation, then we may call her in. Otherwise, she works opposite
I see.
my schedule.
Okay.
Does she just provide service for Ashland or Holliston
No.
as well?
So I guess my question is, do you see this assistant position needing to be a full-time position? Or do you think the service and so forth is okay for both towns?
As of right now, we're holding our own pretty well with just the 2,
Okay.
with the part-time and
Okay.
full-time.
It's good having the part-timer, especially for weekends, because obviously Donna can't work 7 days a week, although
Right.
sometimes she does.
Yeah.
And again, lapses like vacation time or illness or time off. It's
Right.
nice to have a backup available.
Yeah.
And Sophie's very well qualified. I think she's a vet tech, isn't she? She's a vet tech, so she's very highly
Oh,
qualified.
that's good.
Um,
So at the kennel, who's there every day?
There's only myself there, and I'm in and out all day long, depending on what business I
Okay.
have to conduct during the day.
And so,
There's not
There's
we don't
no-
have personnel that's there
Yeah.
all day long. It's just
so I'm,
it's a one-person, employee at
Mhm.
one time,
Yeah.
usually.
And we do have some volunteers that come in
Oh,
to
you have
assist
some
with the
volunteer-
animals.
okay,
They
okay.
walk the dogs.
because if we're gonna be reviewing this contract, now would be the time to have consideration to make sure that you are okay, that, you can handle everything. It sounds like it's a lot.
It's a lot. We juggle it pretty well. The only time, we've gotten jammed up very, very few times on, multiple
Yeah.
dual calls
I
in
can
both
imagine,
towns,
yeah.
and then we have to go to whatever, or even dual calls in one town or the other. And we have to prioritize which call
And
needs.
if you have more than one animal, too, at a time, that can be difficult.
Right.
Correct.
What is the average, time spent on a call? Because at 338, that's basically a call a day. Is it a
could
couple
be-
hours? Is it?
It could be a couple hours, it could be multiple hours, or it could be just a few minutes. It
Okay.
depends on what the call is. And some of them, require follow-up,
And you've probably gotten good over the phone so that you can kind of screen and give advice rather than having to go visit sometimes.
Yes, if we feel that, that's the necessary way to approach
Yeah,
that specific call. We like to try
Give
to get
advice.
there, though. We don't, you know, I don't like to give advice on something I'm not seeing firsthand.
Right,
So
right.
I do try to get there, even if it's, you know, not immediate, but,
Right, right,
you know, within a reasonable amount of time.
yeah. We have to prioritize the seriousness of the call.
Yeah. And with the Holliston calls, you're talking over 500 calls a year
Yeah.
that she's answering. Those, again, calls for service, not administrative inspections, not meetings, not training, so. she-
Quarantines
she-
also,
yeah,
we
she
have a
keeps
lot
pretty
of
busy.
quarantines.
So looking over the operational management plan, there do seem like there are some duties, and I get it, it's a 2009 document, so
Yes.
things have changed. It looks like at least 3 of the 20 that are listed under the actual plan are not being performed right now. So there's a,
Which is,
I think that we have an email from you on January 19th, 2019, saying that there were a couple different areas. I think it's Section 1A, not Section 1A, that's who you report to. It's Section 1F, 1I and J in terms of written reports, and let's see, details of the impounded dogs, and then quarterly reports to the Board of Health and so on. So I think you'd written back in about a year ago that these weren't being performed. I'm
Well,
not
we-
sure what it was in response to, but it's,
well, we do keep records on, you know, any impounded dogs that come in.
okay.
And we, as far as the reports go, all of the calls go through the Ashland Police Department. If it's something that we need to write a report on, such as a dog bite, or, you know, we might not write a report on a dog loose that, you know, we didn't find, or, you know, something that's a minor call, you know, maybe a wildlife call, or something, but, you know, anything major, we write reports and they go into the police, IMC.
I think
Well,
it's
all calls are
education.
logged,
Yeah.
but not every call, as with police, not every call would require an actual report.
Do we get those call logs?
No.
Okay. Because I think that's in the management plan, and then there's education and rabies classes as well. That's not happening.
We don't provide that.
Because that's in the original
We have
2009
rabies clinics in
document.
both towns. I don't do programs. I'm not an expert. You know, what I usually do is refer them to like Mass Wildlife if it's a wildlife question. We field them, you know, but to go in and try to provide any kind of a teaching program, you know, we're very careful about what advice we give people. You know,
Mhm.
like if it's about rabies, we ask them to call their doctor, say somebody's been bitten by a dog, we don't give them advice. We ask them to reach out to their doctor or to the Department of Public Health if they have any questions. You know, as far as the you know, we have wildlife questions all the time. If it's something I can answer, I do, but for the most part, I don't like to give advice on, you know, is it gonna be dangerous or not dangerous? We
We
don't
don't
know. You know, is there a way to get rid of them? You need to talk to Mass Wildlife, because that's not something that it's not in the realm of my responsibility. you
Yeah,
know,
and
as
she
far as-
doesn't do those presentations in Ashland either.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
She'll coordinate specialized training classes to come in, such as the professional clinics.
Okay, okay. And then the only other thing I'd say is that when we do the review of the operational plan, that we also look at our bylaws, because we have a bylaw that has, requires quarterly reports to the Board of Health and a monthly telephone log of all calls. So that probably would need to be looked at as
Yeah,
well.
we don't provide that in
Okay.
either town right
Yeah,
now.
we do have the call logs available through
Mhm.
our police record system
Okay,
Maybe
in
we could-
Ashland.
in Ashland.
Right, which maybe comes back to the point of who the ACO reports to in Holliston, where, you know, right now you're reporting to the town administrator, and that maybe a change to have you report to the chief of police here in Holliston.
So-
But something to look at.
Yeah, the structure we have in Ashland, which works quite well, is she reports directly to Lieutenant Briggs, who is the patrol commander, and then she coordinates everything through him.
Mhm.
So it's always much easier if things go through her chain of command structure.
And in Ashland, again, you don't report to the Board of Health?
No,
No.
not, only if there's, like something under the animal inspector,
Okay,
and we do here as well.
okay, okay.
So should we have someone from our police department be her contact here to do the same thing with reports and?
Yeah, I mean, that's the direction we're heading in, is for
Okay.
the chief to assume that responsibility, just like it is in Ashland.
Okay.
And I'd be very happy to meet with the chief if you so designate, and we
Yeah,
can
that'd be great.
coordinate things. We have an outstanding working relationship with the Holliston Police Department.
Does that mean that the Holliston Fire Department will shift its dispatch to Holliston Police for
Yes.
animal control?
Mhm.
That also will have to change.
Yeah, we find that right now, there's two types of calls that Donna would receive. Police and fire generated calls from here, and then residential calls to your police and fire, which they in turn would contact us. Although many times residents contact Donna direct, but if it's a weekend and she's not working and they leave a message, they're generally not gonna get an answer right back.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we would prefer things to go through our dispatch center, because it's
Right.
staffed 24 hours a day,
Yeah,
7 days a week.
yeah.
And there is a message on the phone also
Yes,
to
Yeah.
call the police if they need immediate.
Right, assistance or an emergency. I mean, she still will always be available to residents for questions, and a lot of times, as Donna stated, she can deal with the situation without actually having to come out. She can deal with it over the phone or make appropriate referrals.
Right.
So, if I may, Chief, as you know, you're here because of the budgetary prompts,
Yes.
but we also have an incomplete MOU.
Mhm.
And so in my world, I would like to see both done simultaneously.
Sure.
Not one precede the other. They will certainly feed off each other. I would encourage you to work with our town administrator over the next week or so to kind of wrap it up. 'Cause we need to
And
get,
the police chief.
yeah, we need to get the final elements prepared for our board to approve the MOU, which will feed the service pieces that I hear you on for the new agreement that may impact the budget. I think Ms. Hine brings up some good points that, you know, in terms of value, the existing agreement called for certain things to be done, and I hear Donna saying we don't and we can't, so the value has to move back this way. And if I could, may I ask you a couple of questions about the budget that I think I heard you introduce when you first came in?
Sure.
In FY '21,
Mhm.
do you have a proposed total budget for the ACO services, including Ashland?
The total budget that we're submitting, including Holliston, less your payment,
Right.
is that figure that I gave you. That is $14,650.
Right.
However, that doesn't cover all the costs. That covers primarily, those are our line items for the animal control budget. The salary and wages that we're submitting would be the $66,679. So you have the $66,679 added to the $14,650.
And then the 38,000 from Holliston.
And the $38,000 from Holliston. And then on top of that, all the additional costs, like the building costs, the kennel costs, the vehicle costs, fuel.
And the assistant?
All of those. The assistant's included in the wages there.
Oh, okay.
So that 66,679 includes Donna's benefits from the town, and the salary of Sophie, the part-time animal
Okay.
control officer. So that's total wages.
Okay.
The current agreement, you mentioned the vehicle, very strange language. I've never seen language like that.
It is strange. That's why I'm saying it needs to be
I would argue,
looked at.
and Dawn, feel free to chime in, it seems clumsy, unless Chief Stone feels otherwise, that you would have an animal control officer deploying from Ashland to somehow get their hands on a Holliston vehicle to respond to a Holliston call.
Exactly.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Is there like
Huh?
a stipend that you can provide in
Well,
the
I
contract?
think that's where, you know, in lieu of the vehicle commitment in the
Right.
new agreement, we look at something different of value that goes in the direction of the service, because whether it's mileage or stipend or something, I don't think we're gonna get our hands on an ACO vehicle, but even if we could, what use of it is it for you? I mean, you already have one
Right.
from Ashland.
Right.
Well,
Shit,
that
well,
and
too.
also,
Yeah.
when I'm any off hours that I'm not at the kennel or on calls, my vehicle is parked right on the town line. I live right on the town line.
Yeah.
So it's right,
Yeah.
it's easy.
So that's
for me.
language that I would just like to blow up and.
Right. We're not expecting you to run out and buy
Yeah.
a new animal control vehicle. You're talking $65,000.
Right.
So believe me, we don't expect you to do that. Certainly, the fee could be modified to help maybe defray some of the cost
Right,
of the
right.
vehicles.
So it's fair to say that the roughly 118,000, the 80 for Ashland and the 38 contribution roughly from Holliston, that does not, as you say, cover the building costs that are associated
No.
with the kennel and the fuel costs associated with the vehicles.
Maintenance, repair,
Maintenance,
insurance,
repair, okay.
registration, and
All right.
no vehicle costs are covered in there. So actually, the animal control budget has a number of components. The line items, which is that 16,000 figure, I brought, just to give you a quick example of some of the things that would cover. That covers primarily medical, food, rabies testing, food, lots of food, and lots of medical. So, and that, actually, last year, we actually ran over that. We ran over by several $100s last year. So those are the things that Donna needs to really maintain the health and safety of the animals. That's
Sure.
that 16,000 figure. As I said, the building costs don't come out of my budget, they come out of the town building
They gotta be heated.
budget. Yeah,
Right,
heat.
and I would imagine the heating costs are high, because when we have animals in there, it's a cement building, so we have to turn the heat up. We don't
Yeah.
have it at 62 or anything like that.
Is
It
it fair
would
to
be
say
right.
that at 338 calls for Ashland, 127 calls for Holliston, that it's roughly the same kind of ratio for the animals that are there at the kennel?
Mhm.
Like a 1/3, 2/3 kind of
Mhm.
situation with the animals
It
in the kennel?
depends.
Okay.
It depends on what the call is. You know, it could
Yeah.
be 3 dogs coming out of Holliston, or it
Okay.
could be, 1, or, and it's, it fluctuates.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for example, there was a tragic barn fire in town before my time, but the medical bills for that alone, which Ashland had to cover, how much was that, Ron? It was like $30,000 or
Just
something.
2018.
Well, the ARL had a $30,000 bill.
Yeah.
The Ashland, I think, ran around 1,900, something
Yeah.
like that, for Tufts.
And
And that
those,
didn't include the food. We kept those animals for quite a long time.
The barn fire up on the
Yeah.
Ashland-Holliston border.
Yeah.
on the
so a
26th.
lot of things are sort of beyond her control as far as, say she
Yeah.
should have a case where there's a situation where somebody has too many dogs, illegal dogs, and say she takes in 10, 20 dogs from Holliston. We're responsible for the medical care and the
We wouldn't.
feeding
Mhm.
and the housing of those dogs, and
Right.
obviously we don't
We
have
wouldn't be
the
able to-
facilities.
To support
Yeah.
that.
And the same can happen in
We'd have to
Ashland, it
Go to
has.
outside, go to the outside to house them.
Mm.
So we keep our fingers crossed that, obviously we don't have incidents like
Right,
that. but
right.
They come.
They
Mr.
do
Chairman, I
come.
just have a couple follow-up questions, if it's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Chief or Donna, regarding kennel fees, if a dog is taken and brought to your kennel for whatever reason, do you provide, or do you collect fees from the owner of the animal for the stay of that animal at your kennel?
It's usually a $40 pickup fee and board that they get charged, and then if there's a running at large fee, it just depends on the situation, and the call. And obviously, it would depend on their ability to pay it too. We're not gonna
Understood.
keep people's animals because they don't have the ability to pay.
Yeah.
But
And
it-
strays, obviously, if it's a stray, that cat or
Yeah.
dog, there's nobody to.
But as a fee, I'm just questioning, do you collect fees from Holliston owners? And if you do, how much is that in a given year?
It's usually a $40 pickup fee.
No, annually for all fees that you collect.
Oh, I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Yeah,
It must vary.
Because you're retaining those fees, correct?
Yes.
They don't come back to us or
They
anything
don't
like that?
I don't retain them.
You can
Yeah.
see where I'm
They
going,
go-
I think.
they
Chief.
go to the
Yeah,
town.
we don't collect those, they would go to the town, so we certainly can find out a figure for you on that.
Because if there is if there's a cost of operation, and I heard food, and things like that are related to boarding, this is a fee service, and, that kind of fee should be, sustaining the operations to some extent. You should be talking to Michael about establishing some kind of a trust fund to hold those fees and pay for the operations of the building and the service over the course of a year. And I would hope that our residents and their animals pay their fair share, because there's money going into your pot, if you will,
Mhm.
and I mean the town of, that is in kind, or it's part of the service, right? I think you mentioned to us that beyond the wage and salary, there was $16,000 worth of operational costs, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So the fees should
Yeah,
be covering that.
Oh,
Almost
well,
completely.
Well, the veterinary costs aren't The veterinary costs are the
Understood,
lion's
but
share.
you folks define the fees, and I'm
Right.
suggesting maybe you look at that as a way to elevate or cover that cost
Sure, that will be
across
part
the
of the
board.
entire review.
Right.
Great.
And I just want to point out that absent that 16,000, the total amount of your budget is only about $3,000 more than it was back in FY10, when it was 78,000, according to the MOU that we had. Holliston was paying about 48% back then, and based on the calls now, we're about 27 to 30% of your business. So my thinking, and this is up to Jeff. I hear you as chief that there are some costs here, but I think there are ways to recoup those costs. But I'd pause a little bit to think that Holliston needs to pay more of its share, given the call volume and the services that we're getting.
Well, again, the primary costs, the kennel itself, the vehicle operation, those aren't reflected in the costs that you have. I don't know whether when they first did the agreement it was an oversight or their costs were less.
Right.
But as far as actual real costs that we're responsible for now, those are costs that the town of Ashland is absorbing. And those are
And
far
you'll-
beyond that $16,000 operational
And
cost.
you'll detail all that with the review, and then we.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
what we're saying is that the agreement's over 10 years old. A lot of the parts of the agreement are either dated and don't need to be used, or there are parts of the agreement that need to be fine-tuned.
Right.
There's parts of the agreement as far as command and control that need to be fine-tuned. And it really needs to be brought up to current operational
agreed.
cost.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And more in line with, for example, when that agreement was drawn up, there wasn't any requirement for the state mandated training.
Right.
Now we have to send them every year for ongoing training.
Right.
Again, that's a cost that would come out of, obviously, our budget.
Right.
The price of vehicles has gone up. Back 10 years ago, they probably just used a van that, was
Yeah,
left
they
over
did.
from
Right,
a shoe
right.
company or something. They put a blue light on it. and
Yeah.
So the profession has really, and for the better, grown.
And we should contribute toward the vehicles in some way, so when you do your review, you can suggest things.
And again, it's all between the town managers to hash out, so.
Right.
We're the operational end of it, and we just want to make sure that the agreement is brought up. So everyone's happy, because it's an agreement that obviously,
both towns benefit
you
from.
need to be happy with, that we're happy with, and an agreement that's realistic and doable.
Right.
And will reflect, because the volume is climbing every year.
Yeah.
So we need to, the statistics in years past were not really accurately kept. We did go back quite a bit, but they were iffy as far as the accuracy on both sides. So last year were good, hard, solid statistics, so we can
Can look at
hang
that.
our hat on those,
Good.
and this year will be the same.
How
So-
long do you think it'll take for this review, because we are in the budget process, and we don't want to wait too long?
Yeah, again, that's something for the town managers to work out, because I guess there's a payment coming this week, or a bill going out or something this week. I
Okay.
don't
We
see
haven't made
reason-
any payments yet this year.
No, I mean, I don't see any reason for that
Yep.
to change immediately. I mean,
Right.
this could certainly be a work in progress.
Right.
I mean, I think it's gonna take several weeks, at least, at the minimum, to hammer out an agreement. My preference would be to leave the number in at 38,000 and work toward the new agreement for the following fiscal year.
Well, we need to make sure that's okay with Ashland first.
Well, that's what I'm kind of suggesting, that we
Yeah.
get together and.
Well, it's above my pay grade. That's for my boss to decide, so. Certainly you two can
Yeah,
always.
I mean, it's been working out for the past 5 years or 4 years at these numbers, so, it's gonna take some time.
Why don't we wait a week or two till you talk to their town
Sure.
manager and make sure that,
Have they provided a draft of what the revised new agreement ought to contain?
No, nothing.
No,
I
we
think
wanted
given-
to talk with you first.
I think given some of the feedback we're hearing from Ashland, I would ask Michael to provide some kind of an updated MOU that contains some of the elements you're bringing in.
Right.
So that's a good starting point that we can then suss out the details.
To your point earlier, John, though, about service, I think that has to be looked at as well. So from the original MOU, what was in there for the operation, for the detail of what the duties were for the ACO back in 2009, I think that's got to be addressed and looked at, as
yeah, it
well as
sounds
the
like
additional
they
costs.
handle
that-
it differently than what we've got, so we need to take a look at that too.
Yeah, probably best level playing field between two towns would be a lot easier for obviously the staff and the residents, because everybody would be on the same
Yeah,
page, more
yeah.
or less.
And that's why I think reporting to a lieutenant here, for instance, like you do in Ashland, would be consistent. So that all needs to be worked out.
Right. Yeah, I think everything's doable.
Yeah.
I just think that, for us not to look at an over 10-year-old agreement
Yeah.
that hasn't changed.
Most things do have to be
Everything's changed around
Yeah.
the agreement, and both towns are growing up, Ashland and Holliston.
Right, right.
So I think, we could probably bring it into a more streamlined or more efficient plan.
Someone thought it was a good idea to put 25 years in there as the term for the agreement.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a pretty good deal way back when. So, as I said, I don't know what the numbers or the figures could shake out to be. Certainly, we're gonna lay everything out for both town
Perfect.
administrators to look at, and they can certainly make a decision. Our job is to make whatever's agreed upon happen.
Speaking for myself and maybe the board, I'd like to move quickly to resolve the MOU details.
Mhm.
I think it's critical to feed the budget process here.
Yeah, we certainly can put
All right.
together a draft updated MOU, forward it over to
Yep.
Mr. Ritter, and, get
Get the ball rolling.
Holliston 2
Get the
cents
ball
worth
rolling,
on it, and
yeah.
Yep.
that's something that's very, very doable. I would probably draft that myself,
Great.
and then forward it to
Great.
Mike Herbert, and then you two could get together and
And you
take
could
a look
talk
at
to
it.
the Holliston chief of police too about his role.
Yeah, he works for you guys, so
Yep.
whatever you want, I'm very happy.
He's already aware.
to meet with. We have, as I said, we have an outstanding working relationship,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah,
It's a great partnership on that end already right now, so.
wonderful. Okay,
Chief, thanks so much for coming to Holliston. It's a pleasure
Thank
to meet
you.
you, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. I grew up in the area, grew up in Framingham, so came to Holliston
Oh.
many times.
wow.
General store, and come out here quite a bit. It's a great community.
It is. It
It's a
really
great
is.
community.
So, and thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Take
See you
care.
soon. Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Cassidy, but he is running a little late. So
Take care, Chief.
we'll do some board business. We have a financial policy that the changes agreed upon last week have been incorporated into the policy. And we would need a vote to approve those changes.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the financial policies as approved by the Finance Committee, reflecting the changes made by the Select Board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, well, Mr. Cassidy is here now, so we'll go back to Mr. Cassidy.
Don't let that seat get warm, Mike.
Come on up, sir. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Got a nice blue shirt on tonight.
That is colonial teal.
Very
Say, I
nice.
think it's teal, not blue.
I like that. So you're going to talk to us about disaster planning and some ideas for Washington Street corridor.
So I'm here as a result of, I believe it was an email that you, the chair, sent. You had some questions regarding debris management.
Yes.
Do you want to sort of set the stage?
Yes, I got a call from a resident that when we had the 3 tornadoes this summer in the Cape, or down the Cape, there was an issue of debris management, and it made it very difficult for emergency vehicles to get to where they needed to get, and for personnel to fix things. And so MEMA is suggesting that each town has a plan for that, which I would imagine would involve having contractors lined up ahead of time, that sort of thing. So I brought it to Jeff's attention, and he brought it to your attention.
Right, because I have been the emergency management director for a little over 20 years. And the state, MEMA, added a disaster debris management plan as part of an appendix to the state's comprehensive emergency plan in 2000. And so they have provided guidance to local cities and towns. And so our local comprehensive emergency management plan has included debris management for close to a decade now.
Okay.
And so the issue is debris can cover a wide variety of content. I just actually got notification today from the DEP, which I passed on to the DPW director and the highway supervisor with regards to just how do we handle snow and ice during the winter, and what we do on a regular storm versus what we do on a storm that might end up being a presidentially declared disaster, because there is work that is eligible for reimbursement that's emergency work to open up the roadways to allow safe passage of emergency responders, and then there's the cleanup work later on. And so part of our disaster debris management plan includes staging areas that are allowed by the community. We have orders of conditions from the Conservation Commission with regards to some places we can put debris, some places we can't, because of the impact on the water infrastructure. So we've already planned for this ahead of time. And with regards to your lining up of contractors, there are contractors that are on state bid. There are also contractors that we have existing vendor relationships with that we have used them frequently for winter storms. We've used them for
Tree maintenance?
well, yeah, but beyond that, when we've had a microburst that's come through, when we had Irene came through, Sandy came through, you know, we were using a lot of both our regular vendors as well as others that were on state contract. Yeah, I mean, there's debris that's things like white metals, you know, depending on, if you've got a tornado that comes through and rips the roofs off of houses, then you've got things like people's refrigerators, and you've got vehicles, and you've got hazardous materials, you've got oil tanks in people's basements. Though there's a wide spectrum for disaster debris, and we've got the guidance from the state. We've incorporated it into our plan, and it exists out there. So I feel very confident based on the number of incidents that we've managed locally in our town, such as Irene and Sandy and several other no-name storms, some winter storms. Pretty confident based on the team that we have that we're prepared and we're ready. So I'm sorry that some folks down the Cape were sort of caught off guard, but
Yeah, that's what I understand, and I
I've-
think
I-
that's what alarmed me.
Sure, no, I feel
it
pretty
was
confident.
Good, good. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
and I mean, I've worked closely with MEMA over the years. I've been on several task forces and subcommittees with them to help exercise plans and develop plans and roll them out at the statewide level, so I'm feeling good.
Good, great. That's what we want to hear.
And I mean, I've got a lot more detail that I can follow up with you electronically and let you see
Sure.
some of the guidance documents that we're using, but rest assured that if a big storm came through, based on what we have, our existing vendor relationships, statewide bid contracts, and our understanding of the Stafford Act and reimbursement from the federal side, what we can do and what we can't do, because there's guidance with regards to what's the town's responsibility, what's the homeowner's responsibility. We've had a couple storms where we've actually had teams that have come out from FEMA to do a damage assessment, and you know, they're looking at the piles of stuff that are at the end of people's driveway that they've already brought up from their basement.
Yeah.
And through your office, we've worked very closely with our waste hauler
Yeah.
to make sure that we do extra pickups. We open up the recycling center.
Recycling center more.
We do, you know, extra, you know, hours on weekends so that people can bring certain types of
Right.
waste. So
When need be, yeah.
we're a pretty well-oiled machine.
Good.
We're,
Yeah, if you could share some of that electronically with all three of us, that would be
absolutely,
great.
I will share it through
Perfect.
the town administrator, and he can
Wonderful.
pass it on.
Do you mean to say that the hauling, the piece of the trash contract that allows for people to call to say have a mattress taken away or an old air conditioning unit currently in any condition, in any weather condition, we could just pick up the phone, we call, and Harvey will come and pick it up? That's a part of this disaster plan. Let's get this stuff out of people's basements so that when the disaster hits, they're not like.
So that stuff is scheduled, and I know right now, sometimes that's scheduled several weeks or months out.
Yep.
For something like this, when we've had a catastrophic incident in town, and we've got an entire, you know, section of town, like we had water issue in the Queen several years ago after one of these storms. We had a lot of people who ripped out entire,
Yeah.
basements worth of carpeting.
Okay.
So we worked with our then municipal waste hauler, and they did extra pickups.
As a
And that wasn't
response to
in
that.
the contract,
contract,
but
okay.
we were paying for it,
Right.
ultimately in tipping fees. But it was,
We got the service.
they got extra resources committed to our community to address that problem.
Right, right. Any questions, John?
You know, Mike, the only question I have, and I don't think you can answer it, is if we had a large-scale disaster or an event that caused multiple days of resources and labor, and how would you get your hands on money to secure those contracts?
So, if, I do actually have an answer to that. If we exceed our local capability, then the board, acting as the chief executive officer of the town, has the ability to declare a localized state of emergency, which allows us to operate outside of the normal procurement regulations. It doesn't suddenly give us a cache of money that we can spend, but we would be able to work with our accountant to find out what we would be able to use as a temporary appropriation to be able to make those expenses. We do have our Emergency Management Response and Recovery Fund, which does have some money in it right now from disaster reimbursements that have occurred in the past. So we would have some starting funds that we could possibly use.
How much is in that fund right now?
Less than 100, I would say probably between 75 and 80.
That'd go quick.
There they go.
That would go in one operational period, depending on what it is that we're hauling.
You know, down the road, Mr. Chairman, we talked, I think it was the last fall town meeting, about the origin of the host community agreement funds and the ultimate destination of how they just kind of gel into free cash and get expended. I had a brief conversation with the town accountant last week about doing a better job at not just managing and tracking that HCA money, but then finding a proper account to locate it in, its own stabilization fund, if you will. Because in the event that we had a large-scale emergency involving an industrial park or, life
Yeah.
safety and things like that, that's the type of
Chemical
funding. Yeah, that's a beautiful source of funding to draw upon for events that Mike is
Right,
talking about
right.
that wouldn't otherwise be covered by federal grants or federal
Right.
aid in the event of.
And that reimbursement that comes, if it comes from either the state or the federal government, can be
Months and months.
months to years.
Yes.
Our colleagues up on the North Shore who had the gas explosions, that was a long time before money came. And even just the regular normal winter storm reimbursements that
Yeah.
we've done, I normally see a federal reimbursement between 11 and 15 months from the date of the incident.
We had our local gas representatives in to talk about the conditions of the pipes and so forth in Holliston because we were concerned about that. How would we go about exercising this fund?
Well, I think we have to work with the town accountant to come up with language and the finance committee to create this account at town meeting. And then identify a stream or percentage of the annual HCA money to go into it, per
we're
town
gonna
meeting
need-
vote.
So we're gonna need an article, Jeff, for spring town meeting, so we'll work on that.
Right.
And with regards to the mechanics of declaring a localized state of emergency, one of the projects I worked on with MEMA several years ago was a local emergency management director's guide, which was distributed to all 351 cities and towns. And one of the appendices that we have is actually all of the templates that we have, so that in the middle of the storm, you don't have to try and remember the language to cite which chapter and section of the
Right.
state regulations allow you to declare a localized state of emergency. It's basically boilerplate. It's, insert date, insert name of community, insert the incident that we're facing, and the date and time that it's approved. And so it's pretty turnkey.
Nice.
And we've got those in Word format, and so we can just drop the pertinent details in, and we can declare if you've declared if you gather your body under an emergency conditions, you can declare that emergency pretty quickly.
Right.
And that emergency could fall under a couple of different umbrellas. It could be a health emergency, a safety emergency, national emergency, or
Yeah,
different
you never
scalable things.
Sure.
So the use of this fund could touch upon a number of different factors, all dealing with the safety of citizens and property. So
Is it your understanding that that language has to be ironed out for the article for town meeting?
Yes.
I think that's what the chairman's trying to point towards, yeah.
Okay.
Other communities have done that.
Yeah.
So it's not reinventing the wheel. But I think what the chief's talking about is very sensible. There are different scale events, right? I mean, we have a federal emergency. Chief is just, he's not, you're not the,
We need
you're
startup
not the
money.
top of that pyramid, but if it's a more localized event, we need resources to restore the conditions back to their original state
Yeah.
after the fire, after the spill, after the release, whatever it is, and it's
Even
gonna
if
cost
in-
money.
Even if it's in rough form, at least it would get us back running, so.
Right.
Okay, so that's something we're gonna work on.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable. We've got great lines of communication with our mutual aid partners, with our state partners. I go to local directors' meetings for MEMA all the time. I just was at a regional emergency planning meeting for 6 communities from the Metro West region on Thursday. We had a representative from MEMA there. Yeah, we've got great relationships that we've built up over the years.
Final question, if I could, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Mike, do we have the authority as a community to collect any remediation funds from a third party in the event that they're at fault? So
Yes,
we do.
absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 21E, the community has the ability to collect the costs incurred by the community to mitigate a release that has occurred. And that would be from either the responsible party, which the law is pretty broad in its definition of who the responsible party can be. It can be the operator of the vessel, it can be the owner of the vessel, it can be a whole host of different individuals. And then we can capture our actual costs. And there is precedent out there that if the responsible party balks at paying those reasonable fees, that we can actually push back on them and end up getting triple damages.
And I presume you've done that in the past.
We have.
Yeah.
We've absolutely captured for releases that have occurred. Yes.
Whenever there's damage to public property and so forth.
Yes.
And then where has that
Was that
mitigation money
chemical?
gone to?
So in recent years, that has gone into the Response and Recovery Fund that was set up. That's a revolving account that that is authorized annually by town meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You wanted to talk a little bit Washington Street corridor?
Just wanted to give you an update based on the leadership of the board as well as some appropriations from town meeting. We have already installed the traffic preemption notification equipment at the intersections of Washington and Highland, Washington and Cole Court, Washington and Concord, and Washington, Woodland, and High. The equipment was acquired, it was purchased and installed, and they programmed the control units at each of those 4 intersections. So now all 7 of the traffic signal intersections along Washington Street from Highland Street all the way down to Washington, Woodland, and High now are traffic preemption equipment capable, which means that if an emergency vehicle coming through with an emitter comes into that intersection, they get priority passage. We have already installed the emitters on our primary and secondary ambulance. The police are in the process of identifying the proper vendor to do their installation. We're also working with our fire apparatus vendor to find the right person who can come to the station and do the project here. Because for the ambulances, we rotated them out of town and went to a vendor who did them at their shop. We really don't want to have a fire truck out of town for several days and having to do multiple vehicles. We believe that we have a vendor identified who will work on the fire trucks to put the emitters in those as well.
Oh, good.
So, and we've already been, since those intersections were programmed last Thursday afternoon, our ambulance has gone through multiple times and is very happy with traffic preemption occurring.
I saw it in action. It was impressive.
It's really important. Those couple minutes make a huge difference.
It is, absolutely.
Mike, does that effectively mean that ambulances now have a clear path from Holliston through Milford to Milford Regional and thus through Ashland Framingham to Framingham Union?
Yes.
Are
So,
in other words, the link is now complete?
yes, the major
chain.
intersections on all of those routes traveling to the hospitals do have the preemption equipment, and it doesn't matter what community the emergency vehicle is from. And even before we had the equipment mounted on ours, some of our mutual aid partners who were driving through Holliston, they were already capturing the lights long before we could. But now, even on our way to local hospitals in the last several days, like we went to Newton Wellesley today, and it certainly helped with several of the intersections on the way to Newton Wellesley as well.
Great. Any other questions?
I have an off question. Tina,
Yeah.
you-
I have a, like, back a couple comments ago question. The money that comes back to the town from state or federally declared emergencies, is it usually 100% refund?
75% of eligible expenses, and not all expenses are eligible.
So where I was going with that thought is if we do a stabilization fund, something like a resident safety response fund, we would expect, if we were going to use it for the types of disaster emergencies that you're talking about, we would expect it to get 75% of what was taken out back.
Eligible expenses,
Yep, of eligible expenses. Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
John?
Yes, I did. With respect to a different project, Chief,
Yes.
the town funded the improvement of call boxes at various town-owned buildings.
Yes.
Where's that project? Is it done? Is it in progress? Can you give us an update on that?
Sure, it's about 60% done. So we've installed the radio boxes at the 2 golf course locations, at the 2 water department facilities that had nothing. So that was phase 1. Was we immediately wanted to capture the locations that had no reporting capability or no alarm capability. We then encountered some snafus along the way as we went in to try and find the best way to connect the existing fire alarm system to reporting systems. We found some systems that were not working or needed some tender loving care. And so the radio box has been installed at the foundry. They had to retrofit and add a new fire alarm system there. They've installed the radio transmitter here at the town hall. And so the next phases would be, we still need to do the library, we still need to do the highway department, we still need to do the schools.
Senior Center?
Senior Center, she had just signed a contract in June for a year for monitoring. So we were going to let that contract roll most of its way, and then in the spring, we'll look to do the project there at the.
And did you say 1750 also?
1750 already had one. When the town did that retrofit, that was actually already a radio box.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Totally random, off topic. We got state money earmark money to expand our radio transmission coverage in
Yes,
parts of town.
the earmark from the legislature.
Thank you, yes.
Yes.
Does that cover Hopping Brook?
So we actually have been meeting repeatedly with the vendor who's going to help us build out that system. We are currently looking at adding equipment at Hopping Brook,
Okay.
at Jasper Hill, at Jennings Road, and at the police station. So it would be 4 locations,
Okay.
and they would all be talking to each other, and that would improve communications capabilities for both police and fire.
Okay. What would you give as a time frame for when there's that radio transmission coverage out at Hopping Brook? Are we talking months? Maybe more than a year? Is there additional funding that's needed?
So the $100,000 earmark from the legislature will get us only so far.
Right.
We do have some existing funds left over from another project. We may be coming back for, I would say it's fairly likely that we'll be coming back for additional funding for like maybe phase 2 or phase 3 of this project.
I'm just wondering where Hopping Brook fits in all that.
So Hopping Brook is our number one priority with this spending this $100,000
Okay.
earmark,
Okay.
because that was identified as the
Okay.
key issue was the west end of town.
Right.
Coverage like getting the Jennings Road Tower, that's nice for the north side of town, but it's not the most pressing public safety concern
Understood.
for us.
Okay.
Yeah, but Hopping Brook's a great site. It's already got a pad, so we don't need to do any prep work. We'll need to put a little hut there to house the equipment, but it's a good location. They came out last week. They did some drone flying to be able to look line of sight to see if they could see from one tower. Now, when I say tower, now I'm not talking radio tower. I'm talking water tower, from one tower to the other tower, and if they could also then see the police station. They're going to do some more drone flying tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Any other safety concerns you might have regarding disaster planning or Anything in general? that
Just
we-
my normal shtick since it's winter. I know it's hard to think about it, seeing as how it was in the 60s yesterday. But should it happen to snow again this winter, we'd hope that folks would help us out. And if there is a fire hydrant in their neighborhood, that if they are able-bodied or know a young person who is able-bodied, if they could make sure to shovel 3 feet around that so that we can access it should there be an emergency. That would be very helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Unless, Jeff, you have anything? No?
Nope.
Thank you.
Great,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I will follow up with some,
Great.
I'll spam you with electronic paperwork.
Late night reading material.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely.
All right. Next up, we've got our finance director position, Mr. Cronin.
Very brief update, Mr. Chairman. Not a lot has happened since our December 10th meeting. I had a brief interaction with a member of our team last week who was sourcing some similar position information for consideration of the job description. But just to reiterate, following the December 10th team meeting, there was a decent consensus from the group assembled about what the scope of the job should include and a strong enthusiasm for it. There was some brief dialogue about the position of the or the role within town government, how it would fit. Those things will be sussed out when we write the description and the plan that will go with it. So my goal is to have something before us by the end of the month as a draft.
Great.
I guess I have a question on that. Was there discussion at the December, whatever, that 10th, that meeting, was there discussion on sort of clarifying how the CFO would operate in terms of authority over investment of funds? Because right now that sits with the treasurer by law. So, like, was that kind of discussed at that level?
No.
Okay. And same with the,
But-
yeah.
But it was discussed that there are certain rules carved out in general law in our bylaws for the town accountant and the town treasurer. This role would oversee their function, not replace it or seek to usurp it.
So can I play out a scenario?
Sure.
So in this scenario, we create a long-term investment policy. So we have a short-term investment policy now, and we decide, with the CFO decides, the town decides that we would like to have a long-term investment policy for the funds that are sort of required by our new policies to maintain in some of our stabilization funds. The CFO directs the treasurer to create that policy, or the CFO creates that policy and directs the treasurer to follow it out?
Okay, so it's a detail that I probably couldn't answer clearly
Yeah.
right now, but I would give
It's
you
a
this guess.
hypothetical
I would
too,
give
so
you
I'm
this
sorry.
guess. A CFO would come up with a plan that would offer detail, you know, at a certain level of what that investment policy should include. That individual will then report to the town administrator on what the plan scope is,
Okay.
and then after dialogue with the town treasurer, bring to the board's attention what the scope would include and get a green light to proceed with drafting that and having it approved, like any other policy.
Okay. Okay.
So, I mean, we'd have a chance to reckon the policy against other good practices, other communities and so forth, and obviously with the input of the town treasurer as well. So that's how I'd see it kind of moving out.
Okay.
All right, so more in a couple weeks.
Thank you. We have our Economic Development Chair here, Mr. Pete Barberi. And since we don't see you that often lately, we want to thank you for all that you do for the community, because he wears many hats.
He does.
Too many.
He's always helping someone, somewhere. So thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
So, you want to talk to us about Glenn Brown?
Yeah, the budget for the Economic Development Committee, the same as last year, is a $328 increase, which is the increase in pay for Karen Sherman, who works for us 5 days during the course of the week. Everything else is the same as what we've got. We now have only one vacancy on the committee, and I understand you've got somebody who has expressed interest.
Yeah, Glenn Brown.
The two newest members are expressing some good ideas. And as you know, in the past, we spent some money in the nature of the brochure and other items, and with the full composition, hopefully we'll get some things to kind of keep keep the kindle on the fire to say Holliston is a good place for business.
Yeah, who are the members on the committee now?
Matt Coletti, Lisa Zayas,
Oh, yeah, Realtor.
David Thorne, the two newest members, Christine Carosella and Oksana Lavenchko. And then there's a new gentleman has expressed interest. He did show up at our last meeting. I didn't get his name.
Glenn Brown?
Hmm?
Glenn Brown?
Glenn Brown, yeah, we have a.
Oh, that's the new person?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, any questions, John?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions?
No,
No?
I do not.
Do we have a motion to approve this gentleman's request?
Motion to approve the proposed Economic Development Committee budget.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Opposed?
to appoint Mr. Glenn Brown to the Economic Development Committee.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All those
With
in
a term to
favor?
expire on June of 2022.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
One other update, I don't know what information Jeff may have provided you, but as you recall, at the last annual town meeting approved filing legislation to create a grant program. We had gone through a year of that because of the Finance Committee's concern of not having language in the article or in the legislation, whereas the town would provide funding for it. So that was the way we sent it into the legislature. There was some concern, I guess, within the legislature and council's office within the legislature as far as that language. It came back to us again last week. I spoke with Representatives Dykema's office, explained, why that was done that way to avoid confrontation with the Finance Committee. She was going to bring it back through council's office and get back to either Jeff or I as far as what their position is. So hopefully that'll get straightened out and move forward for the spring.
Wonderful.
Hopefully. Okay.
All right, you can let us know.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Project needs list, Jeff?
Yeah, in your packet, there is a final draft of the letter that's going to State Senator Spilka and Representative Dykema. This has been circulated widely amongst departments, and this represents the final product.
Okay.
And it's in the folder to be signed.
All right, yeah.
Jeff, one item that seems to be conspicuously absent is anything from the school department.
They would submit a separate independent letter on their own.
Okay, thank you.
Did you find it on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the letter as drafted for the FY21 legislative projects list, needs list from the town of Holliston.
Do we have
Second?
a second?
Yeah, second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And we'll get that signed a little bit later. Budget review liability insurance, Jeff?
Sure. Before we move on to that, there was a couple of other items on the agenda. I just wanted to remind the board that you're meeting on Wednesday night for the sustainability coordinator interviews. You have 3 of those scheduled, starting at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
And on Thursday night, you have 5 interviews for the facilities manager position.
Right. And that starts at 6 also?
Yes.
Okay.
All are confirmed.
Okay. I think the way I would like to handle the facility coordinator position, since there's 5, right, coming to see us, is after reviewing all 5, narrow it down to 2 that would come back for a second interview with the board. If that's okay with the 2 of you. I think that, 5 people is a lot for one night, and we should really think about it and then pick the 2 strongest and see them a second time and flush out a couple more questions and
Sure.
that sort of thing. I mean, that's what we've done in the past.
Not to cross the wire here, but do you envision something similar for the sustainability coordinator, or do you want to?
I don't think we have that many
You have three.
to
Three.
review, so we should
So you,
be.
you think we might be close to making a decision on Wednesday?
We might be able to. We may, you know, during that meeting, if we're not really solid, then I think we should
Okay.
have a second interview if need be there too.
Quickly on Sherburne, any sign of the money?
Not yet.
Okay.
An issue.
All right, but you've contacted them.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Let's
So,
see.
in terms of the budget.
Yes.
There are two budgets in front of you tonight. One is the celebrations budget for $2,000. This is, goes to fund activities on Memorial Day for the flags and other associated things for
Absolutely.
for the Veterans Day activities.
Okay.
So it's the guideline. Well, it's actually below guideline. It's on at $2,000, which was what the amount was appropriated last year, and it's level funded.
We have a motion.
Motion to approve the celebrations budget as presented by the town administrator.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And next,
Next one is the insurance liability budget, and this is based on a 2.5%. What they recommend is a 2.5% increase from Maya. I've kept it at 1% based on the spending history. I think we can well accommodate this. So if you look at a 4-year average in the expenses under the insurance liability account, it's $233,387. That's a 4-year average.
Including a big dip just last year, Jeff.
Yeah, but, yeah. So, what we're recommending here is a budget of $278,327, which is a 1% increase over the $275,572 number that we have appropriated this year.
Jeff, what drives the expenses in this account?
The expenses are broken out into several areas. It covers all of our auto insurance, all the vehicles that are in town. The police, the fire, the DPW, all the vehicles are covered under this budget. It also covers our general liability, which means property damage. For example, the work that was done at the library is
Okay.
covered under this budget.
Is that where the variability in the amounts each year comes from?
Yeah, it depends on our loss
The
history.
claims.
yeah,
It depends. It depends.
exposure.
Should,
It also covers, interestingly enough, the cyber liability insurance. So if we were to be made vulnerable or attacked by a cyber attack, there's coverage under this policy. It also covers all town and school properties, meaning land, and if there are accidents on public properties, for instance, we have a $2,500 deductible per event, and that coverage would be there as well. And finally, there's a section under this insurance policy for professional liability, which is, it covers all school board and all town boards and all committees, any liability that would be out there for public officials.
I'm just struck by the fact that FY20 expended to date is almost the entire budget that was appropriated.
Well, the reason that is because if you pay your bills up front, meaning on July 1, you get a
Okay.
discount.
All right.
So-
Actually know how that works
So
out.
we are not expecting a lot of activity between now and June. So they give you like a 10% discount on
I was
your
gonna say,
premiums.
it's probably like
I see.
10%, which is a big number.
On that budget, it
On that
is,
budget.
yes.
And this is, okay.
Any
So
other
there-
questions?
There are a lot of variables that happen within the insurance budget that
Mm-hmm.
you cannot predict, like the library, for instance, that may happen.
Well, we've had issues at the senior center in the past too.
Sure.
Town hall.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a frequent flyer with them.
Any other questions, John?
No, I'm staring at the number, wondering, based on that average, if this is something we might want to consider undervaluing Mr. Ritter and trying to find some savings. If you can find yourself to recommend another number, or do you feel compelled to stick with the 1% growth?
I mean, being a good bureaucrat, I go with the 1% growth in case we need the money for someplace else. But I would feel comfortable going with the level funded approach at 275.
I think that makes sense to go with the level.
I mean, that would be a $2,783 savings that we would not be using.
Yeah.
Were we to go lower to the closer to the 4-year average that you have there, that exposes us a little bit to risk if
It does,
where would?
but I
okay.
mean, either you budget to the number, or you put in a little bit extra in there, so you have the flexibility. You don't have to deal with year-end transfers or reserve fund transfers.
It would be a reserve fund transfer.
Right, so if you
went
budget
over.
that closely to the edge,
Yeah.
you run the risk of going over, and we don't like to go over budgets.
John, this may be irrelevant, but remind me, last week, in talking about the financial policies, we don't use all of the reserve fund. I think you had mentioned that there was a push to increase it to 1%, not push, but a recommendation to increase it to 1%, and you said, let's keep it at the 0.5%, because we
Yeah,
don't
we've
use.
reverted balances in the reserve account the last several years.
Yeah, I don't know, I think I could see this one going down, but.
If I could make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to fund the FY21 liability insurance budget at the FY20 levels of $275,572.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It's not a big savings, but I feel comfortable that based on the run rate
Mm-hmm.
and amount of expenses we've had over 4 years, we probably won't touch that, so
Yeah,
it really helps.
I agree.
Okay.
Keep it level funded. Next, we have Eversource Interconnection Traffic Agreement.
So, Mr. Chairman, as you recall, we have a preferred vendor for the landfill solar array field.
Yes.
And one of the key components of that project is making the connection to the Eversource and the grid. And this permit essentially says that the town has agreed to pursue further negotiations into an agreement and allowing for their interconnection agreement from Sol Systems for their interconnection application to proceed.
Okay,
And it's going to take, obviously, months before this really happens.
right,
But you got to start.
right. Questions, John?
No, I did extend an email to Beth, I don't know if you saw it yet, Jeff, late this afternoon, asking if she could put together some kind of a critical path plan for us. There are a lot of similar milestones along the road between now and the date we plug the system in, which I think broadly is spring of 2021, a little over a year from now. And I'd like to make sure that we see all of these milestones, because they're not all ours, some of their state
Yeah.
and so forth, the regulatory angles. But I'd like to understand what they are and what the expected time frame is, so none of them get away from us. And I wrote to her, if there's anything we can do to help accelerate internal deadlines and approvals, we should do that. I mean, this is real money to us.
Absolutely.
And I'd hate to hold the project up for
Yeah.
any bureaucratic reasons. So I think I saw something very briefly before I came down here tonight that she was favorably inclined to produce something like that for us. It's a great planning tool, and you got lots of different people involved with something so we can all see the same plan moving forward.
Perfect.
And Jeff, I think I'm correct in saying that the big decision for the board that's coming up next, I mean, obviously tonight's document needs to be signed and so on to move forward, but the big decision is the type of lease agreement we're
Mhm.
going to have with Sol Systems.
Right.
So hopefully that's going to be on any timeline Beth produces.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay.
No, sir.
Well, I don't think we need any motions for that, Jeff.
I would prefer it in case we get called by Eversource for documentation that
Okay.
the board actually made the motion.
All right. I'll take a motion then.
Motion to approve the Eversource interconnection traffic agreement with is it with Sol Systems or
Yeah,
On
for the
behalf of, I
landfill
think.
the
solar
application,
project?
yeah. The application with
Marshall Street.
Eversource, yeah.
Yep.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Snow and ice budget. I don't see anybody from the DPW here. Do you have any information for us?
Just that they had communicated with the board that they are at, I think at 60 or over 60% of their budget has been expended.
And that would be the salt mix type,
Salt, sand,
Overtime.
overtime, personnel.
because there's been a lot of
fuel.
ice. even though we haven't had a lot of snow, we've had a lot of ice.
Yeah, we've had several long duration events,
Yeah,
and that drains the budget faster than a foot of snow.
right.
So in order, the law permits a community to overexpend the appropriation, but the board has to authorize that to happen.
So I'll make a motion, there's no discussion, make a motion to authorize the DPW, Tom Smith, the Highway Department, to overspend the snow and ice budget.
And should we mention that they would need to go see the Finance Committee, obviously, right?
I don't think there's anything that's necessary from the Finance Committee, and that's,
Okay,
the board has the authority to do that.
okay.
I mean, we can certainly let them know.
Right, right, just, I think it would be nice.
I think we already have let them know, actually.
Yeah,
We
I
did.
think it'd be
Yeah.
nice to let them know. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any other business anyone has that they'd like to talk to us about?
I just want to, sort of sitting here the last hour thinking back on the conversation with Ashland and the ACO, I just want to come back to one observation comment about the change in the MOU. When I go through what the original MOU had in 2009, as well as our bylaw, there's an accountability piece that I would not want to lose with a new MOU. So I'm just want to be but cognizant of a new MOU that removes the monthly reporting piece and removes the quarterly reporting piece from the MOU. We have communication from the ACO back a year ago to say that those tasks are not being completed. But now we're in a position where we're going to have a new budget from Ashland that's going to reflect some of the changes in their fuel costs, their building costs, and so on. And they talked about the call log being different between the two towns. And I think we don't want to lose that accountability piece to go back and see that the 338 calls for Ashland and the 127 calls for Holliston. I think we want to make sure that that piece remains, and it's in those pieces of the plan that require the reporting. So I just want to be looking out for that when we get the new MOU, that there's some
Yeah, and
level of accounting in
he
place.
said that the reporting goes to their police department, and since we're gonna have any calls that come in go to our police department, it also makes sense to have those logs shared with our police department. So I think we need to connect those dots as well, from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I guess I just asked Jeff, when you negotiate with Mike Herbert, that's sort of in the conversation, that we have something in the plan and the memorandum of understanding that
For reporting.
Yeah, reporting to our
that is
police.
agreeable, and is reasonable, so that we have some way to
We
judge
need to
the call
have-
volume.
We need to have a log that we can go back and look at in case there is an issue, you know.
That's all.
Okay. That's it then. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 8:43 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for listening, and have a great remainder of the evening. Bye-bye.